I fooled everyone. I'm not special. I don't have particular skills or abilities that really make me stand out. And all of my photographs are just the result of being in the right place at the right time. And technology did the rest. If you live with bipolar disorder or social anxiety, chances are very high that you cross paths at least once or twice with impostor syndrome. Impostor syndrome is that condition for which you feel like a fraud. You feel uncomfortable with yourself because you keep doubting constantly your skills, your achievements, your competence, despite the level of your education or experience, or even like the proof of the achievements that you reached. It basically feels like you don't deserve your success. It's an incredibly unhealthy place to be. To compensate for this feeling of being a fraud, you tend to work much harder than everyone else, and you set for yourself standards that are not really achievable. And even if you manage to meet those standards, you will just come up with an excuse to explain why that is not because of something you did, but because of a lucky set of circumstances that you found yourself in. Everybody is exposed to a certain extent to pressure for success. Western modern society is all about success and personal accomplishment, and families might not really be that helpful, especially if they tend to swing between overpraising for your accomplishment and criticism. Growing up in such an environment makes it extremely easy to fall into the rabbit hole of imposter syndrome, and we tend to judge our worth based on our accomplishments, and of course we are our own worst judges, so it's never going to be enough. In everyday life, imposter syndrome manifests itself as the thought of not being enough. And every time that you actually achieve something, either at work or in a personal relationship, it's always by mistake. At work, you are there because somehow you managed to fool your employer to hire you, and whatever you manage to achieve in the workplace, it's not because of your competence and skills, but rather because either other people made a judgment mistake or because you managed to fool them into believing that you're actually capable. The same goes for personal relationships. You manage somehow to trick people into liking you when thinking that you're worth spending time with, and for whichever reason they're actually sticking around, but deep inside you know that you are just a fraud, that you're not worth having all those nice people around. You don't deserve your status, your possessions, your relationships, your family. You are just not good enough. This is how imposter syndrome manifests for me in my personal experience. But it doesn't end here, because I'm not just someone with social life and a day job. I'm also a photographer. I am someone living with bipolar disorder, and I'm an expat in a foreign country. So it tends to cover all of these aspects of my life too. In photography, I always feel that I am not good enough because I don't have a formal education in the topic. I don't have a degree, and I always feel like I don't have enough experience, and that my gear is not good enough, and that my portfolio is not good enough, and that there is absolutely no reason for me to share it with people, because who would be so crazy to actually appreciate it? And even though they appreciate it, they're just saying so to be nice. It's not something that I really deserve. When it comes to bipolar disorder, that's actually so silly, but I feel like an imposter because when I'm not having a mood swing, that behavior that I have during a depressive or manic episode is so far detached from my normal personality that it can't be true. It can't be that intense. I can't accept that I am acting in such an irrational way. So I feel like people should not be wasting time on me. And this is insane because I do need their help. But even a bigger risk is that you are tempted to stop taking your medication because you feel like you're not really sick. In my case, it never got that far, but I am fully aware that it might be a possibility and I need to be careful. And finally, I'm an expat in a foreign country, and when I arrived, I had to relearn everything, and I still feel like a newbie even after 6 years, because sometimes I don't remember how to get to a specific place, or I'm still not familiar with all of the best photographic spots that are available in the country. So, how do you survive imposter syndrome? I mean, it's still possible to cope with it if you have a few strategies in mind that you can rely on. And my first piece of advice is to create reminders. Writing down a list of all of your accomplishments and what are the evidence, the pieces of evidence for those accomplishments. At work so far, I've been very lucky to be part of teams where the human element of the team members is really amplified, and everybody has the habit of just sending you notes when you do something good. I have a folder in my inbox where I'm storing all of those emails, and every time that I need some confidence and to fight off the feeling of being a fraud, I can open it and read and actually realize that there's people out there thinking that I do have skills to do something good and valuable for them. Another piece of advice is to write down what, in your opinion, makes someone competent in a specific field. And then go through it as many times as you need, thinking in which way you meet those requirements. What makes a good photographer? What makes a good writer? What makes a good parent? What are the features that these people need to showcase in order to be considered as such? Let's stick to the photographer example for now. In my opinion, a good photographer is able to shoot in manual mode, to read the histogram, to understand the white balance, and to be able of taking sharp pictures. And I feel comfortable in all of these aspects. So does this make me a good photographer? I think so. It doesn't make me an excellent one if you want. There's still a long way to go to get there, but I am not a disaster either. And I think that having this written black and white on your notebook or a post-it that you leave on the desk or in a drawer or whatever is important, because you need to go back to some positive thoughts that you had and just try to find some encouragement out of this. Another thing you can try is to separate yourself from your feelings. One thing that I learned after years of therapy is that you are not your feelings. You are not responsible for what you feel and what you think. And just because you come up with the thought that you are a fraud, it doesn't mean that it's true. I think this is fundamental to take the first steps and take control over your emotions and the idea that you are actually competent and capable of doing things. One more thing that I think has a very high value and that I should do more of is to talk it out with others. Find yourself a community of people with which you can normalize these feelings and with which you can discuss your work. Finding this community is going to be helpful also because you will receive criticism, both positive and negative. And in my opinion, any type of criticism is good. Receiving a criticism means that people found your work worth for them to spend time on by forming an opinion and expressing that opinion. Whether it's a positive or negative one, it's not really important. They did find value in your work and they want to help you grow. Moreover, with every piece of criticism you are learning, and by learning you are putting some experience under your belt and you are compensating for not having this formal degree that you think is so important. Learning by doing is just as effective. And finally, just embrace it. if you weren't out of your comfort zone, you wouldn't feel like a fraud. And if you are not out of your comfort zone, you are not growing. And it's a kind of trade-off. Remember that by having this uncomfortable feeling of being a fraud, you are still growing as a person. And at the same time, you can try and keep the discomfort under control by applying the suggestions that I just listed. So I wish you can learn and recognize your achievements and accept the fact that you're actually worthy of them. It's all for today's video. I'll see you around next time. Bye!